Welcome back to this very special episode of Nothing But the Truth with Trudy. We are witnessing an extraordinary moment, one that so many of us have prayed for. After nearly 2 years of heartbreak since the horrific Hamas attacks and kidnappings that began this war, the hostages are finally being released and a deal has been reached to bring an end to the fighting. It's a moment of relief, of gratitude, and of deep reflection, but also one that raises difficult questions about what comes next. What does this deal really mean for Israel's security, for Hamas, for the region, and for America's role moving forward? To help us unpack all of this, I'm honored to welcome back Jonathan Schanzer, one of the leading experts on Middle Eastern affairs and a trusted voice on this program. Just as a reminder, Jonathan is the executive director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and he is widely regarded as one of the leading experts advising policymakers and world leaders on the complex dynamics shaping the Middle East and beyond. He's been following this situation minute by minute, and now we'll get his analysis on the terms of this historic deal and what it means for Israel's long-term security and whether peace in the region is finally within reach. Jonathan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
So it's truly incredible to say these words. After everything Israel and the families have endured, the hostages are finally coming home, and the war is officially ending. What can you tell us about the deal, which includes the return of all remaining hostages and the end to the war? What stands out to you most about this agreement?
Well, Trudy, I think a couple of things that I'm looking at right now. Number one, obviously, we're going to see the return of the live hostages. That's going to happen soon. It could happen as soon as Saturday, maybe Sunday or Monday. But the 20 live hostages are set to return. I have heard that some of them will very likely not appear in the media, that there may be some very tough images that we don't want to see. And I think the families don't want the world to see, at least not yet. At some point, we'll probably see how they emerge, and it will be shocking. We're going to be looking at people who literally look like Holocaust survivors some 80 years later, and that's a terrible image to have in our minds. But I think we need to be ready for some tough photos or tough video. After that will come the hard work of actually locating the bodies of the 28. My understanding is right now they cannot find all of them. You got to remember that a lot of those Hamas leaders that knew literally where the bodies were buried, they ended up dead, right? The Israelis have gone through, like 5 or 6 top Hamas leaders. There's one guy left right now. They call him the last commander. His name is Izzadin al-Haddad. Nobody knew who he was a few months ago, and now all of a sudden he's the guy that is surrendering in Gaza. It's going to be, I think, very complicated. It sounds like the Turks, the Qataris, the United States, the Israelis, they're going to be doing the searching for the bodies, and that is some grim stuff, and that may take a little bit longer. In the meantime, what we have is a purported agreement for Hamas to lay down its weapons. Now, let me just say that's complicated because I'm not sure there's any one Hamas any longer. I think there are a bunch of fighting factions, a bunch of young kids with AK-47 Kalashnikov rifles that have decided to join the fight, but that they may not have even been Hamas some months ago, right? This war has recruited youth to the ranks of what is essentially now an urban war. This is asymmetric warfare. This is not the same Hamas that launched the war of October 7th in 2023. This is a scattershot, disorganized insurgency, and getting that to end may not be the easiest thing. I will say this, though. The people that convened in Cairo, the countries that were involved, and here, we're talking about the Egyptians and the Jordanians and the Qataris and the Emiratis and probably quietly behind the scenes, the Saudis. I hear rumors that maybe the Indonesians were even involved. There is a whole new sort of culture of trying to bring calm to the region that Donald Trump has organized. Now, how the Trump administration uses its leverage after claiming I think rightfully, a victory in bringing the war to come to an end, that is the real challenge for Trump right now. He is going to need to forge a new Middle East, and he's going to have to really lean on some of these countries. I'm thinking right now about the Qataris and the Turks in particular. These are Hamas patrons, and they need to be reformed. And, that's going to take some doing from Donald Trump. But I think if you ask me overall, Israel's ending this war having gotten the better of all of its enemies on 7 fronts after 2 years and 2 days of fighting. That is a remarkable achievement, and Donald Trump has helped to lock it in.
So that's a great overall analysis of the picture of what's happening. Couple of questions come to mind in listening to that. So first of all, thousands of terrorists are being released in exchange for the hostages. In the last exchange deal with Gilad Shalit's exchange, Yahya Sinwar was let out. So many people feel that that is an issue. Where are these terrorists going? What's happening to them? Are they being released back into Gaza? So what is happening with that?
Right. I mean, I don't know. I think the Israelis are probably smart to try to make sure that they are not going to be going back to Gaza. That's the surest way to make sure that Hamas doesn't stop fighting, right? If you're trying to get a ceasefire and you're going to take a bunch of hardened criminals, right? We're hearing somewhere between 250 to 300 of them, including some senior people that Israel is, I think you're going to see some real debate in Israel about some of their names. People are going to be not happy about this. In particular, Marwan Barghouti, if you recall, this was a guy that had basically led the Second Intifada. He ran the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Martyrs Brigades. This was the Fatah terrorist group that Yasser Arafat had helped to create. There's going to be, I think, a lot of debate about whether some of these people should be released. So two questions come to mind, right? One is, if Marwan Barghouti is released, does he become the heir apparent for leading the Palestinian Authority, and does that breathe life into this idea of the creation of a Palestinian state? So I think there's a question that we don't know how to answer yet. I think we will probably start to hear more about it, over the next 24, 48 hours. We'll hear about who's being released and where they're going. But the other thing that I have to ask right now is, all right, let's say Hamas doesn't have a base any longer in Gaza. Let's say they don't have one in Qatar either, because the Qataris are starting to feel some of the pressure from the United States, from the Israelis, from whomever, about their Hamas presence. And let's say they start to downgrade it or even completely eliminate it. Where does Hamas live overseas? Because that's where they're going to live. So it's like Iran, maybe Turkey. Turkey's a NATO country. That's insane that you would have a Hamas base there. I would really not like to see that, and I hope the Trump administration pushes back. I hope the Israelis push back. It should not happen. But then from there, I mean, it's kind of slim pickings. I mean, I look at maybe a country like Malaysia, maybe would take it. We know that Hamas has operated there. The Mossad has actually carried out some assassinations of Hamas figures there in years past. Maybe that's something that we could see. Another place, maybe Algeria. But really what we're looking at, Trudy, is, if you remember the Lebanon War of the early 1980s, that ended with Reagan brokering the exodus of the PLO from Lebanon. And they ended up moving to Tunisia, which is where they operated in exile for basically, I don't know, 7, 8 years before the Oslo process began. And then Yasser Arafat ultimately made his return to the Gaza Strip. I don't really want to see that again. I don't want to see Hamas rehabilitate its image from afar and agree to some kind of a two-state solution thing that then brings them back to Gaza in another decade. I think we need to make sure that they stay wherever they've been put, and maybe even have their ranks thinned out due to Mossad operations or something else. I don't want to see Hamas laundered through this process.
I don't know if you would know the answer. I don't know if anybody knows the answer just yet, but does this deal include a two-state solution, like a Palestinian recognized Palestinian state?
it's not spelled out in the 20-point plan that Trump put on the table. It does open the door for conversations about the recognition of a Palestinian state due to a process of reform and just working with the other side to find moderate solutions and maybe even have the elements of the Palestinian Authority be part of the future governance of the Gaza Strip. It opens the door for all of this, but that doesn't mean that we have to walk through it. I am certain that if Bibi Netanyahu remains prime minister of Israel, he's going to fight it every step of the way. In fact, I think initially there was supposed to be something about two-state solution. It was going to be a 21-point plan. And I think Bibi fell on his sword. That was the one thing that he walked away with where he absolutely refused. And it's what's going to possibly allow him to hold on to his coalition. But I got to say, it's not certain to me that the coalition will hold if, for example, Barghouti is released. You may see Smotrich and Ben-Gvir bolt from this coalition in a heartbeat because they're going to say, you're letting hardened criminals with the blood of dozens on his hands. You're letting him out. We can't be party to this. We can't approve of it. At which point, they leave. The rest of the cabinet says yes. Elections come, and then let's say Naftali Bennett becomes prime minister. Let's say, I don't think it happens, but maybe Yair Lapid or maybe Benny Gantz or whoever comes in, they may be more open to the two-state solution agenda. They may start negotiating. So, I think a lot, you're right to ask the question. I'm right to not have an answer. We need to see where it all goes. But I think the door's not shut on the two-state thing. I think, if anything, what we're seeing right now is a lot more of a groundswell of support internationally for two-state discussions. But I will just say, I don't think Israel can engage in these conversations until Gaza is settled, until the war regionally is settled. And I got to say, as much as I'm thrilled to see the Gaza part of this looking like it's on the road to a solution, we still have the Houthis. We still have Iran. Hezbollah is down but not out. I mean, we still have some complex challenges militarily that need to be dealt with. And I don't think anybody's going to want to talk about two states so long as this stuff continues to pose a challenge.
Really, really unbelievable times. So do you feel that the strike in Qatar is the impetus for this deal? And it's a two-part question, because do you feel that Qatar was nervous that they felt that Israel could strike them, and they pushed Trump to actually push forward with
I think
did President Trump just get very angry about the civilian that was killed in Qatar? But in any event, did this strike in Qatar cause the end of the war, and was it good or bad for Israel?
So I got to say, I wrote a piece for Commentary Magazine about this earlier in the week. I think that attack was probably the most consequential thing that Israel did, other than launching that 12-day war inside Iran, to eventually bring about the severe weakening, maybe not full destruction, partial destruction of the nuclear program. I mean, let me put it this way: Hamas has been based in Qatar for years now, since 2011, 2012. The Qataris have gotten away with it. They've been giving Hamas $30 million a month since 2018, maybe 2017. Before that, hundreds of millions of dollars from the regime to the Hamas government since it took power in 2007. This has been truly disgusting. I mean, this is a major non-NATO ally. They purport to be doing this for the cause of peace. We all know that's not true. They are Islamists. They are jihadists in suits, but they're still jihadists. They are promoting the Muslim Brotherhood and radical Islam worldwide. They were getting away with it. And after October 7th, the Israelis still let them get away with it because they offered to bring back hostages, and they were successful, right? They brought back two tranches. They were the negotiating partners, the interlocutors, but they were never honest brokers. Never. And we always knew they were not honest brokers because they saw Hamas as their client. So at a certain point, I don't know, let's say it was July, August, September, the Israelis are looking and they're saying, okay, we've been working with the Qataris now for 2 years, and they still have not ended this hostage crisis. They still have not ended the war. Either they're not willing or they're not able. Either way, they have lost their value to us. And that's when Bibi strikes, right? And he basically thinks he might be able to take out all of Hamas's leadership in one stroke overseas. He misses. As I understand it, it was kind of interesting. The guys were in the room when the missile was launched. They left the room before the missile hit. Less than 20 minutes. Very lucky, or somebody tipped them off. Whatever happened, they missed. But here's the thing. Didn't matter that they missed. Because that was the moment that the Qataris realized, holy smokes, we can get hit. We're a target. This is dangerous for us. Now there's blood on the carpet here. All of these celebrities and world leaders and diplomats that are coming through Qatar, and the Qataris are like, oh, we're pro-West. We're a sophisticated country. That whole thing is out the window. They're in danger now. They understand that the Israelis can attack them again, and there is no way to stop them. So they're a little bit nervous. And that's when they come to Donald Trump and they say, we need security guarantees. We need your help, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, full credit to the man, he says, okay, you want us? Here's what you need to do. Deliver Hamas on a plate. And that's what he just did. And that is truly remarkable. The Turks, by the way, are also part of this story. They want arms deals. They want, more diplomatic access to the United States. They want a reset. And Trump said the same thing to Erdogan. You want this? Fine, but you've got to deliver Hamas. You've got to end the war. And that is what we're looking at now. Now, I will say this, Trudy. The one thing that I'm still concerned about, I'm still watching, is whether the Qataris and the Turks have truly, are these leopards that have changed their spots, right? Because these are dirtbag countries. I mean, they really are Hamas. Any country that supports Hamas, you got to see them for who they are, right? These guys were supporting Hamas for ideological reasons. They wanted to kill Israelis. They want to kill Jews. They want Islam to dominate, like radical Islam to dominate the Middle East. Has Trump convinced them to quit that in exchange for access at the White House and for certain weapon systems and guarantees? That's a big question that has yet to be answered. The only other thing I'm going to say about this is there's one other knock-on effect of the Qataris getting hit, asking for security guarantees, getting them if they deliver Hamas. Now that there is one country in the Middle East that has this guarantee from the United States, others are going to want it. And I'm thinking right now, Saudi Arabia, which is they see themselves as total rivals of the Qataris. They're looking on and saying, wait a minute. How did they get that deal? I want that deal. And what does Donald Trump say to that? Oh, you want that deal? Got it. Here's what you need to do. Normalize with Israel. Next thing you know, Abraham Accords start to expand. So there's a lot of really interesting things that I'm watching right now. I don't know where it all goes, but I think so much of this tracks back to that attack on Qatar on September 9th, 2025. I will be marking this day for a long time in my career in the years to come.
Wow. Wow. So this actually could be the turning point of global geopolitics and maybe a time of peace for Israel. Although I have to say, the IDF chief did say last night, we will be ready for anything. And what do you think he means by that?
Well, look, nope, peace is not broken out in the Middle East. I know Donald Trump would like to say that he's ended 3,000 years of misery and everything. Sorry, it's the Middle East. It's not the Midwest. It's not Canada. I mean, we're going to have more conflict. And I think the IDF is aware of that. So, I mean, number one, the outliers within the Gaza Strip that may want to keep this thing going. There was an attack, on Thursday morning, where Hamas guys hopped out of a tunnel and tried to attack the IDF, and the IDF repelled it, and they're going to have to be ready for more of that because not everybody's going to agree to the ceasefire. The Houthis still have missiles. The Iranians keep giving them missiles. There's nothing to say that these guys have to stop. I think they might because they always said that they would keep fighting as long as there's fighting in Gaza. So if the fighting in Gaza stops, then maybe the Houthis stop, but the IDF needs to be ready for that. The Iranians are still building up their missile capacity after having a lot of it destroyed. They are still trying to rebuild their air defenses. They may still be trying to actually get elements of that nuclear program back up and running. So the Israelis have to be ready for that. Hezbollah, weak, crippled, maybe even, but still trying to make a comeback. The Israelis have to be ready for that. The Israelis just intercepted a massive amount of weapons, advanced weapons, that were smuggled over the Jordanian border into Judea and Samaria, into the West Bank. They're going to have to be ready for that too. So, again, this is a hugely historic day. Really pleased to see the deal come into effect. I think it is going to have a salubrious effect for Israel, for the United States, for the Middle East. I don't doubt all of those things, and I think Donald Trump should take the victory lap that I expect him to take. Never been shy about taking credit for his wins, and nor should he be here, by the way. But I don't want anybody to think that now war is a thing of the past in the Middle East. War is the norm in the Middle East, unfortunately. We still have a chance to shape some certain outcomes. I think the map can be reimagined with this peace plan being, or the ceasefire plan being implemented, but there's still going to be some battles, some skirmishes, maybe even another big war.
Okay, here's a prediction I'd like you to make. You think that Trump will get the Nobel for this?
Look, I think he probably deserves it if everything is implemented the way that, we all hope it will be. Um, Let me just say, I don't think the Nobel Committee is going to be willing to, I mean, they suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I don't see them, with the full-blown TDS, giving him the Nobel Prize. I do think, I mean, it's really interesting. The hostage families have already come out and endorsed Donald Trump for this.
Yes, I did
I,
hear that.
and I wouldn't be surprised if the Qataris, if it's implemented the right way, they might do the same. The Egyptians, because they're all, I mean, look, they're all doing this not for altruistic reasons. They're doing this because they're going to get access to the White House. They're going to get the things that they want from the United States. And they want to give Trump full credit. They want him to feel good about everything so that they get what they want. So I would not be surprised to see a whole host of countries come out and endorse. I don't know whether that tips the balance with the Nobel Committee, but I know that they're not inclined to give him the credit that I think he deserves.
Okay. Who can be trusted in rebuilding Gaza now? So billions are going to flow into Gaza. But who's going to make sure that it actually rebuilds homes, not terror tunnels? I mean, we can't trust Qatar, Egypt, Turkey. Who can oversee this in a way that we can trust that?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, at one point people were talking about Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the UK, coming in and doing this. I gotta say, that guy, I don't trust him to weed out corruption. This guy's been making deals in the West Bank, sweetheart deals with the Palestinian Authority, which is one of the most corrupt governments in the Middle East. I don't feel like he's the guy to do it. I mean, what we really need is, I mean, it's funny, I was talking about this with a friend the other day. You kind of need somebody like, our former Secretary of State, like Rex Tillerson, somebody that has like run a multinational corporation that is not afraid to handle billions of dollars and is able to actually demand a certain amount of return on that investment. That's kind of what you need here right now. Somebody that's got this kind of experience running a serious business with lots of money, cash, right? But yeah, the risks of corruption and siphoning off of that money into things that where that money shouldn't go, that risk is real, right? When you look at what happened in after Oslo and the creation of the Palestinian Authority, the creation of that government, Yasser Arafat stole so much money from the international community. He absolutely exploited the goodwill of the international community. His wife and daughter right now are billionaires living in France. That guy never earned money in his life, and yet he somehow passed on billions to his daughter and to his wife. That is billions of dollars of US taxpayer dollars, European taxpayer dollars, UN money. That stuff can't happen now in Gaza. So I really hope we find the right people to run this. I don't think it's a Middle East country. I think it should be a well thought of, really like impeccable CEO of a multinational somewhere. I don't know who that is, but I hope there's a short list that somebody's looking at. Jared Kushner, Stephen Witkoff. I hope they're pouring over a short list of the kind of people that really need to run this, that will not do this for their own gain.
Wow, that would be very interesting. That it wouldn't be a country overseeing it, but like a company,
I
actually like
mean,
running it like a company.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you have, let's just say it's $20 billion, $50 billion for reconstruction. Do you want a Middle Eastern country that is also already, like well known to have a track record of corruption? Or do you want somebody that has had to answer to their board and to stockholders and shareholders? That's what I want, right? I want somebody who knows what accountability looks like and has been able to stand up to the scrutiny of sophisticated investors. That's what I'd like to see. But again, I don't know where we are at all of this.
Where does this leave the Palestinian Authority? Like, does it gain or lose relevance? What happens to them now?
Um, well, I mean, look, it's still being run. The Palestinian Authority is still being run by this 89-year-old, Altacocker, as you would say in Yiddish, right? I mean, this super old guy, he's fallen asleep at meetings, absolutely corrupt, no credibility. He's been in power since 2005. Okay, these guys 20 years into a 4-year term. Okay, no credibility, none whatsoever. Hated by his own people, barely the mayor of Ramallah, let alone a world leader capable of, running a Palestinian state. He needs to go, whether that means he's going out on his own volition or feet first, as they cart him out of Ramallah whenever his time comes. But we need to see somebody else come in with credibility. And again, let me just warn, it should not be Marwan Barghouti. It should not be this guy with all this blood on his hands. There needs to be like actual elections. There are no political parties right now in the West Bank. There's nothing. There is no political structure to work with right now. So there's no credibility for the Palestinian Authority as far as I'm concerned. That's, by the way, what made all of the posturing from the Brits and the Portuguese and the Spaniards and the Canadians and the Australians. They're all like, "Oh, Palestinian state, we support it." What state? What government? What planet are you on when these guys can barely govern themselves just in Ramallah, let alone the rest of the West Bank, let alone Gaza? They're a disaster. And so, I mean, they need serious reform right now. And I don't know who's going to hold their feet to the fire. But again, this is all stuff that has to start to come out of Donald Trump's 20-point plan and its implementation. We start down this road, and then it's got to take on a momentum of its own. And I think people can't just, I mean, this is, I think, the real danger, Trudy, is people are going to say, all right, ceasefire, cool, implemented. What else is on, right? Let's change the channel. You can't change the channel because the hard work begins now. The hard work begins with implementation and making sure that the Middle East is built back in a way that doesn't allow for the insanity that we just endured for the last 2 years. And that's the stuff that I'm watching for right now. So, again, full credit to Donald Trump for everything that he's done. Amazing use of American leverage. I wish other leaders from our country would have done the same in years past. We could have brought this war to a close sooner. We could have actually ended conflicts a lot sooner. I'm talking about 10, 20 years ago, if we use strength as leverage. Instead, we were like, oh, well, everybody gets the same kind of position at the negotiating table. whether you're legitimate or not, whether you got blood on your hands or not, whether you're an ally of the United States or not. Trump's thrown that out the window. God bless him for having done it. But now comes the hard part. What is the new future of the Middle East? And we need people to stay engaged.
So, final question. Do you think that this kicks the can down the road? And what will happen when President Trump leaves office and the missiles start flying again?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's always kicking the can down the road to some extent. I do think that if we have more normalization agreements, then maybe we can mitigate some of that. I think if Israel's able to fully dismantle Hezbollah, then we're moving in a better direction. If Israel actually has to launch another surprise attack on Iran to neutralize more of its ballistic missiles and the nuclear program, all to the good. All of that kicks the can down the road to some extent, right? I mean, you want to just try to keep calm as much as you can and hopefully build on it and hopefully make it permanent, right? I mean, that's the strategy here. You're always going to have enemies of the United States, of peace, of Israel. They're going to keep fighting, right? The question is how do you handle them? But I think, Trudy, you're right to ask one important question here is, does this all hold when President, I don't know, AOC or Michelle Obama or Oprah Winfrey become, when they step into office, whether it's in 3 years or 7 years or whatever it is, we have to be worried about that because there is a progressive left in this country that, they continue to deal with the Middle East as, I don't know, like a social justice problem with no answer other than to just hammer Israel all the time. And that's actually not the way to peace. I think Trump actually I think he just proved that. He basically said, you got to support Israel. You got to give it the support that it needs. You have to give them the strength that they already have. You have to grant them the ability to have freedom of action. And that's going to bring about a stronger U.S.-Israel alliance. And it actually has you have the ability to bring about calm and peace through superior firepower. That's not where the progressive left in America is right now. I'm worried. I think the Israelis are worried. I think, when you really think about it, the Israelis and the United States and our allies, we need to be thinking about how to lock in these gains for the next 3 years. I mean, we've got until 2028 to make it right, or as right as we can. And then after that, who knows, right? I hope that the progressive left's, sort of insanity begins to trail off. I think they have to start to get a sense that they keep picking the wrong horses, they keep picking the wrong causes, they're losing elections, and on top of that, they're watching the people that they didn't back win a war. It's starting to sink in, at least I hope. But if it doesn't, Israel needs to lock in whatever gains it can now. And so that's, again, why I think the hard work begins with the implementation of this. Trump needs to stay engaged. Israel needs to stay engaged. We all need to make sure that this goes in the right direction. So, as my colleague Cliff May always says, in the Middle East, there are no permanent victories, only permanent battles. Right now, a new battle begins.
Wow. Wow. Jonathan, thank you for helping us make sense of this extraordinary moment. As we try to process the end of this long and painful chapter, the miracle of seeing the hostages come home, it's clear that Israel's challenges are far from over, and you have shown us that. But tonight there is a sense of collective exhale, a moment to recognize courage, resilience, the power of unity in the face of unthinkable loss. And what happens next will test Israel, its allies, the entire region, and the world. But for now, let's allow ourselves a small measure of hope. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this important conversation. This has been Nothing But the Truth with Trudy Stern and Jonathan Schanzer. You can catch us every Thursday night on the radio at 9:30 p.m. And if you missed any part of this show or want to listen to any of our past episodes, you can find Nothing But the Truth wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.